So in my last video, I went over a fairly involved way to level up very quickly in WoW Remix, but in this video, I want to go over how you can level up in a much more simple and almost fully solo way. Now there's a few things you're going to want before you actually start doing this farm. First off, you're going to want to level up one character up to at least around level 60. The primary thing you're going for is the Infinite Power achievement, Infinite Power 12 specifically. This will allow all of your alts to get the most amount of stats they can get from their cloak right when starting off at level 10. And it will usually take your main character around level 60 to get the 4,200 threads you need for this achievement. That's the main thing you're really going to want before starting any new characters. And for this specific farm location, you're also going to want to be level 20. This does take place in Kraesang Wilds, and that is a level 20 zone. So you're going to want to also be level 20. Now, if you want to take this even a bit further and make this method even more efficient, you can continue to level up to level 25 by doing whatever else you were doing to get to level 20, or you can come here and go 20 to 25, and then you can go look for a group for Mogushan Vault's normal raid, which is the first raid you unlock, because every normal raid boss you kill on any character gives you 14% increased experience for every single boss. So right when you get to level 25, it is definitely much more efficient to go do your daily clear of Mogushan Vaults and then come back to this spot. That'll give you massively increased experience. But that brings us to the farm location itself. It's going to be located at the bottom of Kraesang Wilds at the big bottom island. Now this island is just going to be completely filled with Hosen, and there's going to be a bunch of really large groups of enemies here. They are very easily able to group up and AoE down, and this is going to be the primary farm you're doing. You can do this very easily solo, and pretty much no matter how fast you're doing it, the spawns should be able to keep up with you almost perfectly. I've done this on a level 25 character with the max cloak you can get at that level, so very high stats, having the best tinker gems I could get on that spec, and even with being that efficient, the spawns will still keep up with that, so you shouldn't really have an issue with these big groups of enemies respawning too slowly. And you'll be able to see the route I'm taking in the footage, and you can change that up depending if you find a better one for whatever spec you're playing. But that's legitimately all you're going to be doing for this farm, and there's a handful of reasons why this actually works so well in Remix. First off, just killing pretty much any enemies in Remix at a baseline is pretty decent for experience, especially if you're solo. Even if you're out questing or anything, just killing random enemies is decent. Then you add in the massively increased experience from starting with the maxed out cloak you can with new characters. Then you also have the fact that this is going to scale all the way up to 70. So every time you level up, these enemies are going to level up with you, meaning you're always going to be getting relatively the same amount of experience depending on your actual experience boost from your cloak. So it's going to be very consistent with every new level. Now, one of the biggest issues is going to be as you continue to level up through this, and as the scaling in Remix, especially at higher levels, is still kind of a bit out of whack. Once you get to like 60 plus, this spot can get a bit more difficult depending on what spec you're playing. Like if you're doing this on a lot of the tanks, you probably won't have issues. On some range characters, you probably won't have issues because you'll just be able to kill everything before they hit you. But some specs may have a harder time doing this once you get to those higher levels. When you have a leveled up cloak in your lower level, you're just going to destroy everything super easily. Now, another really good part about this farm is that you are actually going to be getting quite a lot of loot. You're going to be getting a decent amount of bronze. You're going to be getting a lot of stat threads. As you may have seen, AoE mob grinding is actually one of the best ways people have been farming up stat increases, and you're going to be getting quite a lot of loot. You're going to be getting probably more loot than you can generally get just spam running dungeons. As you'll see in the footage, pretty much every group of enemies I kill usually gives at least one or more pieces of loot, and as you level up, you'll constantly be getting higher and higher item of loot. That's also one of the main ways you're going to keep up your power as you continue to level up and get into the harder scaling when you get to higher levels. And if you're starting this farm at say level 20, you won't have a lot of the gems yet. You'll also be getting quite a lot of those just randomly when killing all these. So pretty much every piece of loot, every piece of progression you can get in Remix, you you can get just solo farming these enemies. So you'll be able to do the entirety of your level 20 through 70 leveling at this one location, and you won't feel like you haven't been getting a bunch of bronze or a bunch of stat threads or new gear or new gems to keep increasing your power. And if you're having difficulties once you start to get to higher levels at this farm spot, make sure you're using the new gear that's been dropping, especially the gear that has your tinker gems in them. The higher item level a piece of gear is determines the power of the gems within that item. So if you have your strongest tinker gem in a low item level piece of gear, that gem is going to be much weaker. If you upgrade that piece of gear and put your tinker gem into that instead, that tinker will just be significantly stronger. And in this area, and for mob grinding in general, a lot of the more AoE or survival focused tinker gems can almost fully solo these areas. So if you're having difficulties here, it'll most likely be from survivability. So use some of the tinkers that have AoE damage, that have CC in them, or use one of the handful of tinker gems that just constantly generate shields on you. Also, don't underestimate leech. Use a lot of leech gems. That will definitely help you survive here very easily. But that's pretty much the entirety of this experience farm. I just want to go over a more solo way to be able to level up efficiently in WoW Remix that's not as involved as my last video. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.